Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avent.
Here, and Board Member
Member
Woods.
You have 9 present.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I'd like us to keep in our thoughts during our moment of silence. Please remember to keep in your thoughts and prayers the following individuals: Richard Jordan, III of Alta Elementary; Carl Fuller, 13 of Kirby Middle School; and Melanie Jordan, a faculty member at Barrett's Chapel School. Keep their families in your prayers.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. The question is now on the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to add an item from our procurement committee meeting that we previously discussed concerning the disparity study. I'd like to add that item.
Okay, so Ms. Jones, we will add 8. The disparity study as action item, as a board item 8.6. There being no other amendments to the agenda, we are now ready for a roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel.
Aye.
Board Member Woods.
Aye.
Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones.
Jones.
Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avent.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. I'd like to share just under my report this evening, I'd like to first welcome Ms. Shanice Anthony to the board office team. Ms. Anthony is a graduate of Rhodes College and earned her Juris Doctorate from Suffolk Law School in Boston, Massachusetts. With over 4 years of experience working in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Ms. Anthony brings a strong understanding of policy, governing processes, and collaboration with partnering departments. Ms. Anthony, we are so happy to have you to join our board office. You were needed. Thank you, and then thank you. I'd like to also make note that, as seen on the projectors, we are preparing for our 3rd annual Operation Warm Hearts Winter Clothing Drive, which will be taking place next Friday, December 8th, in front of Oak Court Mall. Our staff and administration will be there from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. collecting coats and outwear for our students. This has been one of our most special and successful campaigns in recent years, as the district has collected thousands of coats and winter clothing items to distribute to students in need. We are collecting new coats, jackets, hats, scarves, and gloves for boys and girls of all ages. Please help spread the word and warmth to students this winter by taking part in Operation Warm Heart, and that will be again December 8th at Oak Court Mall from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Recently, on November 2nd through 5th, the Tennessee School Board Association hosted its annual conference. I want to thank board members who attended: Ms. Jones, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Woods, and Mr. Cornell. We had a great time learning and adopting some policies on a legislative level that Mr. Woods mentioned in our last meeting, so I appreciate all of those who attended to support the efforts of Shelby County Schools. Also this past month, I attended a community school event with Superintendent Hobson. This was facilitated by the UEA and our SCS communications team, where the superintendent and I were able to be a teacher for a day. It's harder than we think. But we appreciate the warm hospitality and the staff at Bell Forest Elementary School, the great programming that they're doing at that school. We appreciate Ms. Phillips and her team in welcoming us and supporting us through our time. SCS destination listening tours have occurred at locations all throughout the city, including Southwind, Douglas, and Hamilton High Schools. We do have remaining listening tours that will happen on November 30th at East High School and December 2nd at the SCS Teaching and Learning Academy, and at December 7th at Impact Baptist Church, and also December 4th at Whitehaven High School. So we are asking for those in the community, please take advantage of one of the upcoming listening tours. We are appreciative of your feedback, and Dr. Griffin would appreciate having as many people to give us dialogue as possible. I want to thank all of the schools who participated in the annual Christmas parade that was occurred on Saturday, November 18th. We had over 50 schools that participated in the parade. I got to speak to a lot of the schools throughout the day. It is great to see so many of our schools having an opportunity to showcase their many talents. That would be the end of my report. Superintendent, your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You took all my information in your report.
Stole your thunder.
But I will say, again, just want to thank all the people who have participated in the listening tour. I think that Dr. Griffin has done an outstanding job, and the response for people who've shown up has been very good. People have been interactive and had a lot of good feedback, and I look forward to being able to share that with you. Again, I know that Ms. Love really wanted to have a listening tour in the Fraser community, and we were reached out to by some people in Whitehaven. They wanted to have one. I think that so if any board members know of additional groups or want to have additional sessions in your district or with people that you specifically want to meet with, Sharon has told me she'll go anywhere to meet anybody anytime. So just let us know and we'll continue. And I just secondly just want to give a shout out to our human resources team. You guys know we had our signing day last week at AutoZone Park. I think we went into the day with 64 vacancies. I think we hired 54 candidates, and we still have a lot of other folks who are getting callbacks. And my directive was, if they're a good candidate, let's hire them and figure out, the placement on the back end. So that work is still going on. So I think they just did a really good job there. And again, as you said in your moment of silence, Chair Avan, it seems like this violence is just impacting our students more and more and more, whether it's 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 13-year-old. It's just getting to be too much to bear. So I just hope that we as a community can come up with some strategies to make sure that whatever's happening out in these neighborhoods that's impacting our babies just needs to stop. Thank you. That's all I have.
Hi. We are now on the agenda of staff action items. The first item on the agenda is 7.1, State of Tennessee Department of Education, New Skills for Youth mini grant in the amount of $25,000.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly what it is. It's a grant in the amount of $25,000 to help with increasing graduation and post-secondary readiness.
Seeing no lights, moving on to 7.2. I'm sorry. Ms. Love?
So, Superintendent, in this grant, so how many children will benefit from this?
Dr. Griffin?
Member Love, this grant is only $25,000, and so we're going to look at special projects in 3 middle schools, and we're going to work directly with 3 teachers.
So you know my next question?
What schools?
Yes, ma'am.
We will get the list of schools for you, Board Member Love, by COB tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Woods?
Madam Chair, I just want to add a little bit to those pathway grants. I had made Dr. Griffin aware of that funding that was award, and she instantly jumped on this opportunity. She didn't say, well, it's only $25,000. She took advantage of this funding that was allocated by the Department of Education, and really it's the work that we've been talking about, which is infusing career pathways in our earlier grades. And so when you have schools that are willing to take advantage of it, they did have to complete the application and compete for this funding. So we're glad that Shelby County Schools stepped up to submit an application and was awarded this funding.
Thank you, Mr. Woods, for your support and influence. Ms. Ms. Love.
Dr. Griffin, another, with this grant and it lining up to post-secondary and career ready, just a suggestion, because I don't know what schools you've chosen, but Westwood over there by, because they're close to Electrolux. What middle school is in that area?
Chickasaw. Chickasaw is a feeder for Westwood.
Okay, just a suggestion.
Okay.
Seeing no other lights, 7.2 sponsorship agreement for East High School STEM School in the amount of $250,000.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is, we've been working on this for a long time, and it's proven to be much more complicated than it needs to be. But essentially if the board's will, what has happened is FedEx has entered into a contract with School Seed to pass through money to the district if the board agrees to give naming rights to the aviation lab. And so as a fiscal agent, I don't think there's no fiscal agent fee here. The money comes directly to the district to make the purchases. We did hear the board's concerns around making sure that in the event that the ASD were to take over the school or something like that, the equipment would continue to be ours, just like the aviation equipment was at Wooddale when we decided to move it. So the request or the recommendation is for the board to approve the naming rights for the East High School lab, and then the money will come to us through School Seed.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Superintendent, how does that resolve the problem? Because I know that I do support this, but I know that was the major source of discussion at the committee meeting, how the items would be purchased, who would purchase them to preserve make sure they stay with Shelby County Schools. And so money coming through School Seed, has that been worked out?
School Seed, I think School Seed would actually purchase the equipment and give it to the Shelby County Schools.
So it's going to be ours and it's a gift. So if there were the takeover, it would still be vulnerable. So it hasn't been worked out.
Well, no, I think that we sort of ran into this, Ms. Jones, a little bit with the Wooddale situation. And I think that the analysis was, that the equipment wasn't necessarily a fixture, or things. So we moved the aviation equipment from Wooddale a couple of years ago.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, moving on to 7.3 supplemental registered nurses and licensed practical nursing staff in the amount of $1.7 million.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that we typically bring every year for supplemental and substitute nurses. And we have a different list of vendors that provide those services, and they're all listed on the action item.
Orban McCornell.
Yes, it's regarding the nurses. I know that we will always need to have some contracts, but why couldn't we incrementally add nurses to our staff?
So I think that we actually are looking at that in this budget that came up last year, Mr. Cornell. I think we were able to add a few additional nurses this year to the staff. The challenge always is just the supply and what we pay, just quite frankly. So, I think that when we looked last year, it's just nurses are hard to find. And then hospitals and these services pay a little more than we would pay. But I think when we bring in budget this year, we want to bring more in-house nurses, so there can be some continuity.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Orgel.
So, Superintendent, the cost went down from 2014, 15, 15, 16. Is that fewer schools? Why is the cost down? I'm curious.
I believe we've hired more full-time nurses since then. Is that correct, Dr. Whitelaw?
Because it's all public record, what do we pay it's an RN, I guess, right? What's the salary range?
I'll ask Dr. Baffert if she's here, or either Sean, our average salary that we pay for nurses.
This could be a public service announcement.
Yes. Very appreciated.
It's all public record, so it doesn't matter. Thanks, Aisha. So I just, because I'm on a hospital board, we're actually competitive, and I happened to ask somebody today, I was in an event, how we were doing on nurses, and the shortage has subsided. So you probably are doing a good job if you've hired 28, because I know the big hospitals had huge shortages, but you're very competitive on your pricing. And do they get benefits?
Yes, our nurses do get benefits.
And so the only difference is between if you were competing with one of the hospitals and the
Schools.
if we were competing against one of the hospitals, would be that you couldn't offer overtime and weekend because ours is 8 to 5 shift. Basically, is that right?
That's true, but also we have nurses that receive some overtime by riding on buses with our students and going on field trips with our students as well. So there are some cases.
So the $23 I know is competitive. How much are we paying an hour when we have like 7 or 8? There's 7 or 8 people I think we're hiring nurses. How much are we paying them an hour?
The agency nurses are actually more an hour. I believe our RNs are at $41 when we contract them from the agency, and they're right at $36 when we contract them for the agency for our LPNs.
So the only difference between, and this is why, and you did a great job. I looked at the chart going down. I think that we should maybe be more aggressive in pay because the $16, $18, $18 and $13 an hour is only going to somebody who has the ability to deliver you a nurse when you need it, because some of those people might not want to work regular jobs, meaning that they want to be more flexible. So we're actually probably paying double for those nurses. We could maybe incent the nurses, maybe pay for some of their, let's say we're competing on a UT, U of M grad, I think Southwest has a nursing program. You could maybe work on their student loans, some kind of grant program or something if they stay with you for 2 years. Do something to incent them to come work for us. And rather than pay staffing services, and your students don't get to know those nurses because they're like substitutes, they're moving in and out. So you've got $1.7 million to play with there, right. And won't have to worry about being staffed. So I would just, superintendent, I think when you budget, just pay a little more, be more competitive, and maybe offer some incentives. And I think that we won't have this acute shortage, which they've done a very good job reducing.
And I think to that, Mr. Orwell, I think it's a great point. So we also want to, I think as we're thinking about the budget, over the years, we kind of cut some of the nursing services. We actually want to bring some of them back, and look at having more nurses in the schools.
Mr. Cornell.
Yeah, the nurses that are on our payroll, they do get state retirement, don't they, like the others?
Yes.
Like
Yes,
everyone
they
else is
do.
full-time?
They do get state
Well, see,
retirement.
that's something we don't have to, that's something the state will provide, the state retirement. That's a benefit that you can't compete with anywhere else. And so, is there, Madam Chair, should we consider a time certain to get a report on an alternative plan down the road? Or I would like to suggest that there, at some point, we get a comparison plan of Mr. Orgel's suggestion and the current status quo. I just think that would be good at some time in the future. Can you?
Superintendent, Mr. Cornell would like to request an update on what would be a strategy and I guess timeline if we were able to bring more nurses in-house.
Would it be, Mr. Colonel, I guess maybe April or so in connection with the budget, if that works? I mean, with that, is that a fair amount of time?
I'm sure, and I've just heard Board Member Orgel mention this twice, and then he has figured up an angle, and I think we ought to consider that angle.
Yeah, I agree.
Board Member Jones.
So, Mr. Superintendent, I'm not so sure. I welcome the opportunity for a report on what it would look like if we did bring more in-house, but I'm not so sure that bringing every nurse in-house, I still see a scenario where we'll have a need for these agencies, especially in light of the fact, I'm sorry, as these are small businesses, some minority-owned and women-owned, and who've done business with the district for years. And I'm not saying that's the driving reason, but I do think that there's been a level of continuity there in terms of service. And the fact of the matter is, even permanent employees are sick. We are still, I think, going to need a resource for when that happens, and to secure those services.
Oh, I agree, Ms. Jones. I think it's got to be a both and. I think we need to figure out a way, because we're always going to, especially if we start scaling up the number of nurses that we have, but we're going to always have to have some temps to come in, and people have IAPs and different scenarios pop up that we can't plan for, and so I think you have to have a cadre of folks who work for us, and then a strong bench of folks to be able to come in.
Seeing no other lights, we're going to move on to 7.4, SCS Textbook Selection Committee names.
Thank you. As the board knows, every year there's a different subject that teachers come together and select different textbook / curriculum options, and these are just the teachers that are going to be on the committee. I'll turn over to Dr. Griffin for some more context on this.
Board members, we are in the process of adopting the textbooks of science, PE, health and wellness, CTE, fine arts. Fine arts includes art, music, theater arts, dance, and media. And we will reveal those textbook committee names to the superintendent by COB on next Monday, because they can only be named at the board meeting.
Ms. Love.
So what did you, the grade level, or is it just K-12?
It's K-12.
Okay. And can you
And it's about the content now.
repeat them again?
Okay, so those subject areas will be science, PE, health and wellness, our CTE, and fine arts. Fine arts includes music, theater, dance, and media arts. And we haven't adopted any books since 2009, so this is our year.
Okay. So with the science book, will this be aligned to our standards?
Well, we have a committee that will actually look at, some choices.
Are you making that a recommendation, that the choices that are selected be aligned to the
Well, the
standard?
committee has to make the recommendations, but these are consistent of teachers who currently teach those subjects, so they are very, very much aware of the standard alignment that's needed.
So the teachers are the ones that actually make the selection?
Absolutely.
You're
Those
just
are our
selecting
committee.
the teachers?
Right.
Okay.
Board Member Jones.
So we haven't adopted books since 2009, but this subject, we've done something since 2009 with books.
We have. And it's based on what the state
So
recommends.
we're purchasing, but we haven't adopted. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And even though the state recommends, we don't have to purchase, but we have to follow the state's recommendation.
So, and I ask this question every time, we adopt books, but we don't purchase them.
Well, we could.
We could, but we traditionally don't purchase them.
Well,
We purchase PD and other supplements,
yes.
but we don't purchase books. But I know we have to adopt it, and we go through this elaborate process, secret process, and then we ultimately don't purchase books. We purchase supplements that we haven't gone through a process for, and we purchase PD with copies and loose leaf, and that's been my objection all along. That process should go through the same scrutiny as the adoption process, and it doesn't, because we adopt something that we don't use, we don't purchase.
So the last textbook we adopted, Ms. Jones, if I'm correct, Ms. Isbell, was the Journeys K-5 reading series, and I think we purchased that the year before the standards changed. And since then, we've done what's called, I guess, like blanket adoptions. They come in, the state gives you a list of stuff, and then you can just adopt all of it. And that's, I think, how we've operated over the last couple years.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Mr. Caldwell. Seeing no other lights, 7.5, teacher tenure.
Thank you. These are just the teachers that under Tennessee Code Annotated have earned tenure. I think we have a list of the teachers. Yeah. So I think it's 101 teachers.
Seeing no lights, 7.6, expansion of parent engagement teams, West Ed, in the amount of $178,500.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is exactly what this is for the expansion of APPT.
Board Member Bibbs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really just asking a follow-up question because they came to committee and we talked a lot through this, but I was expecting some additional information, and if it was sent out, clearly I missed it. So I'm just trying to make sure that we have those numbers around what does it look like to do the plan that we asked about.
We have not reconnected with the consultant because we were waiting on the approval of the contract, so we're able to re-engage with them. So as soon as that, we provided the pre-plan, and as soon as we're able to reconnect with the consultant, we're able to provide a full plan as requested during the committee meeting.
So you're saying we would have to come back and then vote on some additional dollars versus us doing it all at one time?
No, so this contract will cover us for the remaining of the school year. The additional request that was made during the committee meeting was for the next school year. So we will bring that forward for the committee meeting for the board to approve if that's the way we're like to move forward with it.
So it was my remembrance that it was not for next school year, where if we were saying that we're expanding the team, that they needed to have some professional development so that they would be able to do the work, we asked to find out how much would it cost for them to be able to be trained within this time period, so then that way they're ready to go moving forward. That was the ask.
Right, so that's in addition to the current contract that we have with West Ed at this particular moment.
I understand that, but I think the question is how much more would it cost so we would know about dollars right now.
Got it. So when we did the pre-plan during the planning session with the consultant, we estimated that at about $78,000. And that was presented at the committee meeting. That was that pre-planning document that was presented, but I'm happy to resend it if that's okay with you.
Okay, you can resend it, but that wasn't what we were talking about in the committee. I think we could, I know Ms. Love has some additional questions, but I think ultimately we were saying this. We're hiring more people on that team, and if they're going to be a part of this work, they should have some additional PD, and they were suggesting that this group is the people that do it. So that happens in this budget year. So we won't have to come back and say yes to some additional dollars. We wanted to know, A, how much would that cost us? And B, were the same students a part of the cohort so we can really have some true data around if this is really working for us? Those were the answers that I was looking for.
So I just want to make sure I understand, Ms. Smith, we can make sure we get it. So I know we did expand, parts of the community engagement team. So for them to basically be trained alongside with APPT and build capacity.
Correct.
Like what would they, okay.
Correct.
And what would that cost? And then was a question, I guess, around the
And
corner.
we also want to know the students who are currently a part of the first cohort, because they were saying we were going to use that data.
Okay.
We wanted to verify that they were taking students A from the first cohort to be taught to this school year, not just saying the same schools are involved. That doesn't mean that the same children are involved. So we
Okay.
needed clarification on that.
Okay. We'll get that to you tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Board Member Love.
And Board Member Bibbs is correct, but I do want to know, being that this is parent engagement, I do want to know what's the connection, the conversation with your department and Dr. Ray's department. And I also, going back to what Board Member Bibbs stated, as far as the training, I do know that I don't know. So the teachers who are already trained in the school, they're currently working with the parents and the principal now, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how much did that training cost? Or was it those same people are the ones who came and did the 1 and 2 day training?
Correct.
Okay. So how many of the people who came and did the 1 to 2 day training are already implementing the APTT?
So all of the schools that are participating in the 1 and 2 day training are currently implementing it, because that's what the 2 day training does. They go through the entire process and then they build the plan for the year. So what we've scaled back right now until we were able to move forward with the contract is the pre-planning sessions that happen prior to each APTT session with the teachers.
Okay, so is that all 14 schools, or is that just the first cohort?
All 15 schools receive that support.
Okay, so they're currently working this model now?
Correct.
Okay, are they doing a good job?
We believe so, yes.
So actually, to continue the process, we don't need any more implementation dollars if we already have the current teachers who are implementing this program and they're doing a good job.
Right, so the reason why we adjusted it and made it as pre-planning sessions was because the feedback that we received from the principals and the teachers during the first year of the implementation is that they needed more prep time and one-on-one coaching to develop their presentations, the activities, and how they were going to basically conduct their meetings. So those are the things that we're doing right now that was requested. So even though they've been trained and they have all the materials and build the capacity, the request was that they wanted more one-on-one time for the planning of those sessions.
And I would also, Superintendent, like to see the participation rate at the schools. And I know when this was first presented, the data was not the actual data. So I believe they only had data from the entire school and not necessarily the children who participated. So I would like to see the data from the children who participated, where they were, where they are now, and you're just going back to Board Member Bibbs, you know, how successful is this? And also making sure that we know a set price, I guess before we come back December the 5th, making sure that we have a set price, because I know that this has already started, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm comfortable with paying $178,000, $178,000 for to teach parents and teachers how to communicate with each other. Seems like that would be common sense, but I know we've already started this, and I know they've already started to implement certain things. But I would like to ask Dr. Ray, I know that the departments are separated. I just want to make sure the communication piece is there, because community engagement does not handle parent engagement anymore.
Members of the board member Love. Yes, I've been collaborating with Chief Powers. So I do think that we will have a plan in place to, you're talking about the family engagement specialists that we just hired to be trained. Yes, I do feel that APTT would help support the family engagement specialists as they work with our parents.
So the family engagement specialist would do the parent meetings, or would it be or is it a mixture, parent engagement, principal? and
Right.
teacher.
Well, going forward, we was hoping to transition to the family engagement specialist being trained in the APTT model so that they can actually carry this out.
Okay, so are you saying that the family engagement specialist would be they're just doing the training, but they're not involved in the meeting with the parent?
Well, that's the purpose of the training, so that they can be involved in the APTT model. I thought the request from the committee was the family engagement specialist actually trained on the APTT model to assist in the parent-teacher meetings to garner more support for the parents.
Okay. So where does the training for the teachers come in at?
So, Ms. Love, I think what we had discussed is that we were going to have the training model of APTT as part of the onboarding process for the family engagements. So then the family engagements are basically the APTT champions at the school, and they're able to help the teachers through the process. But it still requires some training for the teachers that will need to be part of the contract with the consultant. So they could do at least a 1-day or a 2-day training with the teachers over the summertime. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to make sure, that the teachers are the ones that are doing the most communication with the parents, because they're the ones who receive the children in the morning. That's what I'm trying to make sure.
Right, so the teachers will still conduct the meetings. The family engagement specialists will support the project throughout the entire year to ensure that the sessions are being scheduled, like all the logistics and all, like the framework of the model.
So I just want to make sure, so for the homework purposes for us, I mean, and I think that, you know, we need to figure out or be clear on when APPT comes in and, like I say, train now, like also including the family engagement specialists in the training so that they could be, quote unquote, trainer so that we can sustain this without having to pay APPT every year.
Correct.
So we need an all-in cost on that. And then I guess just a theme that I keep hearing, and I think rightfully so, is how do we know that this is effective? You know, what data points are we looking at, you know, to measure effectiveness? I think that's something we need to be clear on by Tuesday. And I guess finally, making sure we're looking at the same cohort of kids to, I guess, as one of the touch points in the measure of effectiveness.
Board Member Caldwell.
Well, so the superintendent happened to bring up some of the questions I had. I'm assuming that what we hope this meaningful engagement between the teachers and the parents would be that the kids would perform better academically. So when I look on here, and one of the reasons we asked for the measurements of how we're going to know if this is a worthwhile endeavor, goal 1, 75% of eligible families attend 2 or more meetings, and then 90% families view it as useful. But I would like to see more than that, although I think those are worthwhile, but hopefully tracking the kids so we can see that this is actually pushing academic achievement. So if you could, Superintendent, if that's what you feel was within some of the things you were asking, I'd appreciate it if we could have something like that as a measurable outcome to.
Absolutely. I guess, Mr. Leon, can we get with maybe Jessica and kind of think through some more, you know, maybe lagging indicators in addition to the survey or whatnot, to be able to measure the effectiveness of this moving forward. Maybe 4 or 5 good data points we can share with the board. Okay.
So, Superintendent, I guess as a follow-up to Mr. Caldwell's question, when we ask for these kind of data sets, do they become part of the KPI? Are we expanding what those KPIs are under particular priority areas so that it's documented ongoing?
I mean, we certainly are not opposed to adding it if this is one the board wants to monitor or just provide, you know, monthly updates, however you want to receive the data. We can get it to you.
So I would lean on Ms. Bibbs and Ms. Love to give some guidance to the administration on how you may want this information incorporated as part of either our monthly or quarterly KPIs.
Because in just thinking it through, like, I mean, obviously, some of your initial indicators are obviously attendance in the program, and then I guess like I could see how, you know, maybe some attendance, maybe some disciplinary, and then obviously at the end of the year you'll have, you know, some measure of student achievement if you compare it to cohorts of kids who didn't attend. So I think we can build some milestones. And
Mr. Superintendent, may I make a suggestion? What we can do, because after every APTT meeting or during APTT meetings, families set SMART goals along with their teachers or where their child currently is, because that's part of the model. They review their current data, and then they set SMART goals or where they want their child to be by the next APTT meeting. So we can show those trends by student of where they were compared to from APTT 1 to APTT meeting 2 to APTT meeting 3, and then we can show end of the year progress for every student. So if that seems in alignment with what the board desires, we can present it that way.
so let's circle back with Mr. Leon and have something to share with the board, some suggested KPIs at the meeting on Tuesday. Okay.
And Ms. Bibbs can just give some input about the frequency of those being shared. Ms. Love?
One more question. Yes, sir. The students who are participating, or the families who are participating, you said they have SMART. What did you say they have?
They set goals at every
SMART
session.
Goals? Okay, so these are academic goals?
Correct.
Okay. So, being that we're paying, that we're going to, well, if approved, we'll pay $178,000. Has anybody thought of including attendance, discipline goals? All of these children, because if you're having APTT meetings, apparently they're not where we want them, right? Or they're struggling in some areas.
Right, so families, the teachers invite all of the families in their classroom, and all of them are able to attend, and then they set SMART goals based on math or foundational skills. So whatever the foundational skill the teacher has determined that is most necessary for that classroom.
So we have a program that's aligned to help with our academics, and we know, Superintendent, that we have a truancy attendance issue. If we have the parent there, why are we not providing everything to this parent? If we get them in the building, we should give them every information they need while we have them there. So not just academics, what other issues, you know, is the child having, or if the school is having? And then, have we asked the parents to sign up for the parent ambassador? Because if they're coming to a meeting, apparently they're concerned about their child's education. They're concerned. So I think that when we have parents there, and if you say that we have a great crowd of parents, we need to utilize, well, we need to take advantage of the parents being there, and not just use it for the APTT.
Got it. Yeah, we can make that as an adjustment, so it can happen across the board in all the schools.
So when I know you have to bring information back for December the 5th, but I would like to see maybe in March or April, I would like to see some data around that.
So just to be clear, attendance and discipline data?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to assume that if parents are setting SMART goals, that attendance, you know, would be one of them. I mean, so let's figure out are there kind of a set of goals that everybody uses? I mean, that just is so connected to student achievement. Right. And I think that we can, so in March or April, Ms. Love, which? Yeah,
some data in March or April, because the issue is communication with parents.
Yeah.
The PTA meetings are not well attended. That's the main thing the principals and teachers talk about. Yep. So if we have a good crowd and we have those parents there, let's take advantage of it.
Yep. I agree.
Mr. Caldwell?
So I just had a suggestion for consideration about KPIs and measuring this. The key performance indicators that we determined, there's a couple of sets. Some are operational, that the Council of Great City Schools publishes as a manual, and that's helpful in terms of identifying if you're on a cost basis that those departments are operating efficiently. The separate KPIs that we worked on in our retreats or more to give the board indicators that we were on track to meet the goals that we're setting, so that we as board members don't have to try to get into the day-to-day business. If we feel like we can see and from data that tells us we're getting there, then there's no reason to go under the hood. I would suggest that things that are the purpose of the performance indicators on these kind of things should be program specific. They'll be captured in the larger KPIs, but until we have enough data to think it's a good program, and I think we ought to, I don't know how y'all feel about it. It's just something to think about when we decide what we want to do with the indicators around this and how they interact or interface with the other KPIs that we're using. That was all.
And I'm hoping too, Ms. Powers, from our discussions, that once we build a capacity, we won't have to keep coming back with APPT contract. Okay. All right.
Seeing no other lights, moving on to 7.7, membership subscription to IT Research Gartner Incorporated in the amount of $245,620.
Mr. Williams.
Sorry about that. Good evening. This is a 2-year contract with Gartner. They provide us research, executive programs, and consulting services. Each of the last 2 years that we've used it, we have realized savings that cover the cost of the contract, and I expect that will continue for us.
Board Member Caldwell.
So my question is where is these funds where are these funds being accounted for? I know we've approved a large number for ERP and implementation. Are these funds that are coming out of that money we already committed, or is this an additional ask? And when we look back and see what the cost of the ERP, is this something that should be included in the cost of that?
No, sir. This is separate from the ERP. These services are used in the IT department throughout the year. So they, as a matter of fact, they assisted us in reviewing ERP responses and contracts during that process, and actually identified some areas that we would have overlooked if they hadn't been afforded the opportunity to look at them. So they provide us this consulting service as part of their consulting service. We also use them for my position and my director for professional development, because of the rapid changes that happen in technology from year to year. There's no way for us to keep up with other than take advantage of a service such as this, where we can get firsthand and pre-knowledge of changes in the industry.
I think, said another way, Mr. Caldwell, no, this is a separately budgeted item, just a general consulting contract that IT uses, and it's not coming out of a ERP line item. Yeah.
And the microphone so that they can hear.
Oh, turn it on too might help. So I turned it off because Board Member Orgel found a new friend from days past and wanted to catch up, and I didn't want everybody else knowing what he was asking me about. But
okay, TMI. Board Member Woods.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's our annual investment? But to Caldwell's point, we approved.
Yes.
Okay, so that's separate than what? That was part of the auditor's contract.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Got you. Yeah. Again, there's no question about the work that they do, but you did say something that startled me for a second. You talked about professional development for you and your director. What about the rest of your staff?
We take care of them.
You do?
Yes.
Because I just want to make sure I'll be looking for that in the budget to make sure that, because I know they do a great job back there. I want to make sure that we're providing professional development for the entire team.
Believe me, we make sure. It's a challenge.
All right.
And we can never budget enough. But in IT, we've learned that we take advantage of a lot of the free stuff when we can. When it's local or nearby, we take advantage of it then. But we're trying to toss you a layup, man. It's almost budget season. I'm just telling you, look out for your guys, man.
But we'll look for the zero line item since you're going to do it for free, though. All
You know,
right.
I always ask. You know, I take it to the height and then let them chop it down. But yes, we do consider everyone's needs.
Seeing no additional lights, moving on to 7.8, legacy data conversion and integration services.
Yeah, this Mr. Caldwell and board members, this is on the ERP line item, and it's a contract to basically clean up the data, and I'll defer to John to clean up the data as it goes into the new system. Essentially, the quote I think that Cherry Road or Oracle or whoever gave us was higher than if we brought it in locally, so we wanted to do a bid and have some local folks have a chance to get some of this work. And so this will go to the ERP line item.
I just want to make sure to notate the dollar amount, which is $414,656. Mr. Caldwell?
Just wanted to apologize for skipping ahead. My questions were actually about this one, so thank you for answering.
Seeing no other lights, 7.9, marker and tack boards in the amount of $128,484.
Yeah, these are for 384 marker boards and 540 tack boards throughout the district.
So, Mr. Superintendent, there aren't any lights, but I do have a question about, when we go to conferences throughout the country, it seems that some of these kind of items are outdated. So I really wonder about us spending this amount of money on tack boards when most school districts around the country are moving to more tech-savvy ways of interacting with our kids. So it is a question about whether or not this is a pertinent, purchase, considering where we are. And as Mr. Williams so eloquently pointed out, technology changes each day, but we're still using more antiquated systems.
Ms. Phelan, can you speak to that?
Sure. Thank you for your comments. And the intent is in the future to go to walk talk technology, which is where you can literally write on walls with markers. I think the challenge we have right now is we're already behind in terms of installing over 200 marker boards across the district because of this repair. So the intent was to replenish the supply so we can get through this school year, and then we'll transition to another model as we're working on schools in the future.
Board Member Jones?
So, board member, we attended the same conference, and Chair Avent. So, I saw demonstrations of technology that allows the student to use their cell phone when they walk into the room. It syncs with the device, and they can use their fingers, and they can actually draw and things of that nature. It's more energy efficient. Board member Cornell, and it's certainly you can update it with patches and with things of that nature, and I think that's the type of thing that I was amazed that we are not even thinking about, and that many districts are going to where they have this 60-inch screen. It syncs with the student's personal device. I think that would be an excellent way for us to start integrating technology into the classroom, and with a academic focus on the use of devices instead of Facebook Live. And so I really think that we need to move away from boards and things of that nature. I don't know about the walls. I didn't see that. But I think we really need to look into technology, and instead of investing to repair these bills, we need to see what's out there on the market, what others are doing, and see how we can start moving in that direction.
I would say, I think to that point, Ms. Jones, and I was meeting with Lynn today, and I guess over the last couple of days, we have a good problem. Apparently, I guess our charter enrollment is down, so there's more dollars in the Shelby County schools, and then our BEP allotment was higher, so we're probably looking at somewhere around $20 million that we need the board to think about how to reallocate and reinvest. And I know that's again a good problem. So we're going to ask the board to probably in January to think about how we want to spend that money. And the technology is always a great place to look.
We'll be ready. Anything but cell towers.
So just so happens that Mr. Orgel is the next light.
That's got to do with revenue, Teresa. I was reading this. We can't tape things to the wall anymore? That was the whole, the justification for doing this wasn't what everybody's saying. If anybody read it, Stephanie, it says that the justification is that we're getting these boards so we don't tape things to the wall or staple things to the wall. I don't know how we'd staple some to the wall, but yeah. So,
Ms. Phelan.
I mean, was that a mistake?
It's not a mistake. So as part of the fire marshal walkthroughs, we would get cited if there's an inordinate amount of things taped or tacked to walls. And so in trying to move away from those practices, the tack boards are also a way that we're trying to offer places for people to tack stuff so they don't put it on walls, because if it exceeds a certain percentage of stuff on the wall, then we get written up for it by the fire marshal.
All right, good deal. All right, because that was what the justification was.
Right.
But maybe we can bring some abacuses back too.
Board Member Cornell.
Yeah, mine's a question of process. If someone says, well, we need more of these boards, then I guess your job is to procure the boards.
And install them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that. My question is, when do we reconsider new technology? At what point in the procurement process is the question asked? Academics or wherever.
Oh.
What's the new? Is there something else we should replace it with that you've seen, like they saw?
I think that much to Board Member Jones' comment, having a technology plan in terms of how we want to migrate what areas of our technology for the district is probably what we need to do. It's not a facility-related activity; it's a technology-related activity across the district. Happy to partner with the Office of the CIO and the rest of the cabinet to come up with where we want to migrate technology and for what reason.
Yeah, because it's not, you're doing your job,
right.
Replenishing, but the question is, as things keep changing and changing and changing, just what you said, we need to before we buy more of the same, we need to reconsider it and see if the other departments say, hey, we found something new, or actually have someone that can continually research for new stuff, so we can be ahead of the curve. So I appreciate what you said.
Mr. Caldwell, no question. Your turn. Okay. Moving on to 7.10, roof replacement, Overton High School, in the amount of $530,720.
That's exactly what it is, Madam Chair. I think it's been to the Facilities Committee.
Seeing no lights, 7.1, chiller installation, White Station Elementary School, in the amount of $107,834.48.
I think that's been there to the Facilities Committee as well.
Seeing no lights, moving on to 7.12, major and minor mechanical installation, emergency and support services, in the amount of $1 million.
Ms. Phelan.
This is the item that came through the facility ad hoc meeting, and we talked about it briefly in the procurement meeting that we just had today, where feedback from the board was to go in and ensure, with the contracts department, we've done that, and this item is bringing forward $1 million versus $19 million, which was actually the number and the body of work that was brought into the procurement process.
Seeing no lights, moving on to 7.13, reimbursement agreement for ASD chiller replacements in the amount of $194,699.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we talked about this in the Facilities Committee, and just so the board knows, I actually did send a letter to the ASD today, advising them that they cannot make purchases outside of our process, and that while we would make a recommendation to try to resolve this today, further, engagement in that type of activity, we just wouldn't honor. I copied you guys on it, so you probably have it in your inbox.
Seeing no lights, thank you, Superintendent, for your quick and rapid response to our request to make sure that the ASD is in compliance with state law and that these are our buildings, so I appreciate your follow-up. 7.13 reimbursement agreement, 7.14 LEA compliance report.
Yes, this is required by the state every year, and I think we want to have our general counsel bring this back up in his report next week. The issue with this compliance report is it's so broad, and I think that school districts really across the state have some concerns with the nature of the language. It's changed a little bit this year, but it's basically saying that we're in compliance with every law and rule, education law rule, and I think that one of the things that general counsel pointed out that, just for an example of a concern is, we don't want the state to come back and say, well, you're not in compliance with giving us data. So we want to work with the state a little bit more before we sign off on this and ask the board to approve it, but did want to put it on here, and we'll bring it back in his report next week.
Seeing no lights, 7.15 class lobbying fees, Millsaps Goin Government Relations, $37,500.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just the contract with class. As the board knows, we are in a collaborative with Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Nashville, lobbying on issues that affect the 4 large school districts, and it's just our portion of the contract.
Seeing no lights, moving on to 7.16 November 2017 budget amendment.
Mr. Johnson.
I'm presenting the budget amendment for November 2017 amendment. We're amending the federal fund. There are 3 new grants that we're receiving. One we talked about earlier today, related to the new School for Youth mini grant for $25,000. Also, there's an additional grant for priority schools that's about $3.8 million as well. That will service about 28 priority schools. There'll be additional 19 positions added to that, 4 teacher positions, 8 ed assistants, 1 a family engagement specialist, and 6 behavior specialists as well. And this would go towards supporting those priority schools. And I'm happy to share a list of those schools as well with the board. And then the last relates to the WIN, the Workforce Investment Network school grant as well. That grant is for about $92,000. And the bulk of that grant is to support a new position, a WIN associate, and also pay additional costs for participants in that program.
Board Member Love.
Was this the result of the increased enrollment?
No, this is not a result of increased enrollment. This is actually a result of us being very proactive in pursuing grants. The priority school is something that Dr. Griffin and my team pursued with the Department of Education, and we were able to garner that $3.8 million.
I'm sorry. I see federal funds. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I'm sorry.
You don't even have to go into the spiel. Mr. Cornell.
I'm just wondering, let's see, the teachers, 4 teachers for $110,000, that's pretty low, isn't it? I mean,
so that's
27,000.
correct. So our go ahead.
What is, I mean, for a teacher to be paid $27,000 for 10 months, what's that?
So they're not being paid $27,000. So I mean, part of that will go towards the portion of time that they're working, and any additional stipend that would be applied to them.
Oh,
So yeah. And the same with the ed assistant. So that the ed assistants and the teachers, that amount doesn't cover the
Okay.
full amount.
So it's an enhancement.
Yes.
Okay. Now, our total budget this year was how much?
So our total budget this year stands at $1.4 billion if you look across all of our grants. Now, if you look at just the federal fund, that would be increased from 180 million to 184 million.
And that 1.4 includes pre-K and Head Start?
Yes, it would include, yes,
Okay. All right.
yes to both of them. There are some pre-K funds that are in special revenue and that we get, and also some pre-K funds that are in the general fund that we budgeted for. But to your point, Head Start, Head Start, the pre-K expansion grants
Okay.
are part of that fund.
The 1.4 billion.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And 1.4 billion.
Billion.
Yep.
B. Billion with the B. Seeing no other lights, we're going to move on to board items. 8.1, proposed policy, first reading.
Good evening, Board Member Superintendent. You have before you a list of policies that have been vetted through our board members' IVO committee meeting. They consist of primarily statutory and regulatory revisions, with the exception of the policy on attendance zones and student conduct. And we ask for your action on tonight, on first reading.
No action tonight, but
Thank
for
you.
next week.
Yes, thank you.
Seeing no lights, moving on to 8.2, group short-term and long-term disability insurance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think at the last meeting, the board wanted to bring this back, I guess, for possible rescind the contract, and ask for some information because of the, I guess, the multiple RFPs. Essentially, what we found is that if we just cancel the contract, there's no penalty to us. We do have, I guess, since open enrollment's been going, I guess, I think it's around about 7,000 employees who've selected it, but we can simply let them know that we are not offering the benefit through the district, and that they can secure it on their own. And that's what we found in terms of what would happen if we rescind the contract.
Board Member Caldwell.
So, my memory's getting bad, but I think that's well above the minimum amount that they said would cause any expense to the district. Is that correct?
Say
The
again.
minimum number of people we've met the hurdle. I think it was 2,500 employees, and so we're well over that. And so, effectively, there's not going to be any, if we don't rescind it, and I just want everybody to be aware of that there's no cost to the district, no raising of the premiums, and that was all. I just wanted to be clear on that.
That's correct. And I think, again, just for some context for the listening audience, Mr. Caldwell, this was just so employees can always get their own short-term disability policies. This year, we just tried to secure one vendor that employees could go to, but it never prohibited them from going to other places. So if we rescind it, then it'll just go back to status quo, and employees can continue to get it from who they want to get it from, and we'll continue to do payroll deduction.
Board Member Woods.
Thank you. Superintendent, I'm trying to look at the end game here. I know there was a great deal of dialogue around the process, the procurement process. I think board members asked really good questions. But I'm thinking through what problem are you solving, or are you creating one here? If you cancel this contract, to Caldwell's point, well over the minimum threshold, 7,000 employees have elected this benefit. You send out communication now that the board, because it's not you, the board has elected to cancel this contract. Walk me through what does next Tuesday look like for, or preferably Wednesday morning when my voicemail is full.
We would, Mr. Woods, if we did it, we wouldn't say the board. We would just say.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm really just. That's not really what I mean. But seriously, I'm saying, like, I get the point that there are other vendors out there. Would it not be an easier solution to add those other vendors, communicate to those teachers that there are other options? I thought that's what we were getting at, is that we had eliminated other possible vendors, and that this opt-out model gave an advantage to this particular vendor. If we cancel, I just want somebody to talk me through what's the implication of the employees, and what does their process? I mean, they're busy teaching school. Like, what does that look like for them?
I think Board Member Woods and board members, we do have some concerns about if we were to cancel or opt out of the current contract that the board has, at this point voted on. I think, can we do it? The answer to that is exactly what Superintendent Hodgson said. Yes, we can. But at this point, we have approximately over 8,000 employees that have elected to keep or enroll in the short-term and long-term disability coverage through the selected vendor. That will become effective January 1 of 2018. So if that's rescinded, what we would have to do is really, really ensure that we've communicated to all those employees to let them know that they may have other options. But some of the things that obviously concern us is the ability for us to do that. People may have terminated their coverage through one of the other vendors, and those other vendors that are available, they offer individual policies. And so the whole point of us bringing this recommendation to the board was to offer a group-sponsored product that allowed employees to get short and long-term disability coverage at a much cheaper rate. So by us, now rescinding that, what we would say is you have the option to get the coverage, but it is going to cost you more because you would have to go to one of these, one of the vendors that offers an individual plan. I don't know if, for example, if you had a pre-existing condition, if they would make you meet any eligibility requirements all over again. And because those are individual policies, the district can't offer any assistance with those policies as we could with the group-sponsored program. So there are, several concerns. Additionally, we currently do offer a group-sponsored long-term disability program. Right now it's through Standard. So, we've notified them that they obviously participated in this RFP process. We notified them that they were not, the winning, they did not have the winning response or bid. So we've notified them that we were going to end that contract. So now we would have to kind of go back to them and also see would we be able to continue at least the long-term disability coverage through them as well for the employees that currently have that benefit and that can elected to continue a long-term disability group sponsored plan. So short answer, can we do it? Yes, we can. But are there concerns? I think we definitely have some concerns.
So Superintendent, what I'll say there is I think what you guys are doing is proper protocol. This is a board's decision. There was points raised. We debated this issue in great detail, and now it will be up to us to ultimately vote on this particular item. I will tell you, due to the uncertainty of this, and that is not a cost to the district, while I think the procurement questions were valid, I will not be voting to suspend this. I will encourage you all to communicate with our employees on what other options that are out there. Maybe send them a list and contact information of the top 3 vendors. But I mean, I think you're creating a problem that I think they voiced legitimate concerns. But I am not support of, until you know all the unintended consequences of this of canceling this contract, I will not be supporting it.
Board Member Jones.
We haven't deducted, we've started deducting yet, so we haven't done that.
Started the payroll deduction.
And
Your open enrollment just ended last Tuesday.
So, and this is something new that they didn't have before.
The group sponsored short-term disability is not something that they've had before.
Okay.
They either could have gotten the short-term disability through like one of the 3 vendors that offer the individual policies. What we did offer was a group long-term disability program through Standard.
Okay. So, I was present for both debates, and there were valid questions. I voted in favor of it, but I will not be voting in favor of keeping it. I will vote to rescind the contract. I think it's more important for us to communicate. If we're going to communicate anything, we need to communicate when the calls come into the inbox that we can reconsider this. We can do another RFP. We can still pursue this. It's not the end. It's not the final. We as a board, and I certainly would support doing that, but I can't support this. And so I will be voting to rescind the contract, and I would urge the superintendent to have a real conversation with all the board members about the concerns and issues that led up to this, putting this back on the agenda, and perhaps looking at this and trying to come up with something that's best for all employees. I understand it doesn't cost the district anything, and I understand it's providing a group plan, but we need to make sure we're doing what's best for employees. This process has been fraught with all types of issues and concerns from this board that didn't just start tonight. And so I'm more concerned with doing something that's best for employees, getting the best deal for the employees. None of it's based on how we're putting this out there. Whoever the provider is going to cost us anything. So that's not the issue. But I'll tell individuals who call my inbox and who put messages in my inbox and who call me that we're trying to do what's right for the employees. It is my desire that there will be another opportunity for them to enroll. You haven't had any deductions. If you feel the need to secure this in the interim, then there are others out there, as you have said. And if and when we bring this back, we'll certainly communicate that, but that's my desire, so that's what I'll tell them.
Board Member Love.
So Board Member Jones basically stated what I was going to say. So Superintendent, what is the current price that we have now for our?
You mean with the new?
I didn't hear the question.
What's the current rate?
The current rate.
The current rate.
I think that's actually one of the issues. What we offer now for short-term disability is just the ability for the employee to elect the coverage, but it's an individual plan, and we simply offer the payroll deduction. So we don't know what those plans are. We don't know what the rates are. I think we've come up with some examples. We even have people on like the benefits team that have the coverage, and for the disability plan, I think one example was an employee was paying like $70 a paycheck for disability coverage, and that's per paycheck, so that's like $140 a month. With the group sponsor plan, you get rates that are less than half that, and that was kind of the catalyst for us even going down this road. And I will say, I understand that there were questions related to the procurement process and the process that we went through with the initial RFP and why we chose to go out with the second RFP. And again, the reason that we chose to go out the second time with an RFP was simply because we did not extend that personal invitation to the current vendors who offer individual plans. They were not offering our employees an exact replica of what we presented through this recommendation.
Okay. And just to make the board aware, I did meet with Ms. Smalls for a couple of hours today, and she answered the questions. The issue is, like Board Member Jones stated, the issue was the process of how it happened. And I wasn't comfortable with the process of how it happened. But I did meet with her. She did answer the questions, but it still went back to the process of how it was handled, how we got to the place we are right now.
Board Member Bibbs.
Thank you, Chair. I think Board Member Jones and Board Member Love have said exactly kind of a lot of my thoughts. I think ultimately, if we're saying we definitely want to have the best product for our employees, and I think that is the catch that we're saying. And I don't feel comfortable about the process that we had when we went through what we just did. I think if let's say we were to say we still want to offer this, Superintendent, what would it look like if we then said putting out another RFP? Give me a timeline on that.
Yeah, we certainly could do another RFP. You know, I think that I'd want to do a couple things if we do that. I mean, I think you guys are going to talk about a disparity study now. I want to see what impact that would have on it. And then also, just we need to get with the team to figure out realistically what the time would be. Is it a 30-day process, a 60-day process? So if you give me a day or two, I can tell you how long it takes.
Okay. I would appreciate having that information. I think ultimately, you know, we're saying, oh, it's not a cost to us, that's okay. I think that we can't really take on that attitude of it. I think, you know, it needs to be something, if we're going to offer something for our employees, it needs to be the best product that we can stand behind the process. So when we do get those questions on our phone, via email, whatever they are, that we're truly able to stand up and say, we said yes to this for this reason. And I think that's the ultimate thing about what we're looking at today.
Mr. Cornell?
What's interesting to me is that I have a long-term care policy with the state, and the state just said, well, we're not doing it anymore, and you'll get a letter from the person you purchased the policy from, and you'll be paying them directly. So I think what might happen here is these people will just get a letter saying that this has been this payroll deduction has been discontinued. You'll get a letter from the company and pay them directly until something new is set up. Wouldn't that be the...
I think it depends on what the employee actually had. So a couple of points. Not all employees were enrolled in the individual disability policies. We did have a substantial number of employees, probably well over half of our benefit eligible population, to now enroll in the group-sponsored short-term, long-term disability program. But to Board Member Jones's point, we have not started the payroll deductions yet, but they have made an affirmative election to enroll in that coverage. So it's not just sending them a letter telling them to go back to what they had, because all of them did not have an individual policy. So some employees may be kind of left without a group-sponsored option, or an option that they can actually afford, because the individual policies are just more expensive. But, you know, we've certainly tried to make sure that we kept the vendors that offer the individual policies engaged through like the entire open enrollment process. We had a benefits fair. They were all here. Employees spoke with them. We definitely include them and keep them engaged in everything that we do, just to make sure that employees are aware of all the options. Even though we only payroll deduct for those benefits, we still make sure that we include them in everything. Communications, all of that.
But now they were automatically enrolled?
In the group sponsored, yes, you were automatically enrolled, and if you did not want it, you had to opt out. Which we have well over 10,000 benefit eligible employees, but only about 8,000 opted to keep or affirm their election.
And I think that if we do go back out to bid, there will be a group plan offered at some point. Now, Madam Chair, we've used the term rescind, which I think is a parliamentary term, but I believe we discussed before the contract term would be to cancel. So I'm asking...
That would be correct.
I'm asking, if there's going to be a motion, I'm asking the parliamentarian who's not a lawyer and the lawyer who's not a parliamentarian, if they could tell me, who's neither, what do we do?
So, General Counsel. He is passing the buck.
You're correct. The parliamentary term is rescind. Also, an equivalent term is to annul. The effect would be to cancel the contract.
Does that answer your question?
Us legal
Mr.
counsel
Cornell?
disagrees with me.
Do we need to? I wish that, I would like to make sure that the motion to rescind, which is in effect to annul, is actually going to be considered a cancellation, which I believe we can do under the contract.
You've used all three of the words. Thank you. Mr. Cornell, you got them all in.
That's true.
You got it in.
But
All of 'em.
that's true, right?
Yes.
That's how we're going to enact this? The motion passes?
But I think you're talking about taking action next week.
It is. It
Not
would
today.
have to be action next week because we are not. This is not a voting
That's
meeting.
correct.
Mr. Orwell.
Mr. Superintendent, so the winning bidder, I remember this item, was MetLife, and the person who came in second was who? And so either you decided to put this back on the agenda or somebody did. I'm curious why this is back on the agenda. I mean, we vote on hundreds of contracts, and I've never seen like an air conditioning contract, anything else put back on the agenda. Who put this back on the agenda? What's that? Who put it back on the agenda?
You remember?
I mean, somebody had to request it to be on the agenda.
Ms. Jones requested it to be back on the agenda.
Okay, I'm just curious. So usually I thought we like do this the next meeting when we have a procedural thing, and it would have been easier to maybe do it next week. But that's okay. I think it was like 3 months ago. But
Yeah, we did. You missed the last meeting where we did talk about putting it on the agenda for this particular
gotcha.
meeting.
I apologize for that.
No problem.
So the winning bidder, and I remember we rebid this thing, was MetLife. So were they less expensive? Or you maybe Ms. Small?
Yes, they were.
Do you remember, like, throw out some figures? I'm just curious. Because we're trying to take care of our employees here, and I understand we're providing them a group benefit that we're not paying for, that they're paying for, but we're taking advantage of our group purchasing power to get them a lesser deal.
That's exactly right, and that's the difference between the group sponsored versus the individual. So when we look at the financial offer from MetLife for the option, the short-term disability plan option that would offer the 7-day elimination period, the cost was about $4.6 million compared to Unum's. Their cost for the equivalent coverage was about $5.8 million. So there was a difference in
That was
in
short
price.
term.
That's for short term.
And that's
yes.
like 30-day waiting period, 60-day waiting?
Was for a 7-day elimination period and a 26-week total benefit. So
Okay.
what we offered employees were two options. You can get a plan with a 7-day elimination period or waiting period, or a 30-day elimination period. Obviously, the 30-day plan is more cost effective to employees, and there was about a little over $1 million in cost and total cost from the two bidding or the two responses for those plans as well.
So if you extrapolate that, if there's 10,000 people and it's $1 million difference, if everybody took it, it would be $10. $100. No, it'd be $100 a year, $8.50 a month difference. Am I doing that right?
For the employee.
How much does it save the employees for the winning bidder that we selected?
And this is where it gets a little sticky because we it's not like we are currently offering a comparable type of coverage.
No, I mean between the bidders. What's the difference in price
the two
per
bidders.
employee? Is it not broken down per employee?
Yes, we do have, and I'll ask Ms. Poindexter, do you have the per $1,000 cost of coverage? We do have those rates broken down, but when we're analyzing the bid, we look at the total cost.
Like if everybody accepted the coverage and then
yes,
what that would be?
If all the benefit eligible employees accepted the coverage and the cost, and so that's how we compare like the total cost. But it is broken down because it's age banded, so there are rates kind of based on age, and we can calculate what those rates would be for an average employee.
Is there some ambiguity here or something I'm missing? Is there some nuance? Is there something I'm missing on why that is it MetLife?
Mm-hmm.
Are they cheaper than whomever else?
Yes, their quote was cheaper. Their cost was cheaper than Unum's cost.
So
we did, as part of the process, we reach out to the finalists and offer them the opportunity to submit a best and final offer. MetLife did come back with a best and final offer, Unum stayed status quo as it relates to they didn't change their rates. So through the best and final offer process, MetLife reduced their rates even more, which is why we have, the decreased rate for MetLife.
Okay. So it saved our employees who were not paying for this benefit they're paying for themselves. We saved them money.
Yes, if I follow you
If they
correctly.
chose the.
Yes. Yes.
Oh. Well, I think y'all did a good job. So anyway.
Thank you.
I don't see the controversy, but
I think that,
I would elect to stick with them until the process is done, meaning till their contract's over. And then if y'all want to rebid it next year, rebid it next year.
I think that's definitely a fair recommendation.
Board Member Jones.
So when you bid this the first time, you didn't bring that to us. And so your reason for putting this out was a mistake on the district's part.
I think, I wouldn't say necessarily a mistake. What we did not do was offer the personal invitation. And I think, like, even in conversations earlier today, as we've talked about, like, the process, the procurement process, and potentially going back to something that we used to do with Legacy Memphis City Schools, where we had a vendor list. So if you were an insurance vendor, regardless.
I don't mean to be rude, but I've heard that 2 or 3 times. So, you didn't. It was something that the district did in the process that caused you to unilaterally decide, I've selected this bidder, but now I'm going to renege on that and go back out again. And that's after that person's information, numbers, figures, what they had was already out there for everyone to see. Is that correct or not?
We never brought it to the board as a
not?
recommendation. I am not sure.
The information is public at the point that you got it to a public point. Did you not? When on the first
I would have to
selection?
defer to procurement on that one.
So was at the first time, did you offer the option to give their last, whatever you call it?
Best and final.
Best and final?
Yes, ma'am.
And it wasn't, the best and final wasn't the current vendor, the first time around?
The winning bidder last time
The first time around.
The first time around, it was
So then after that first time around, knew all of the numbers and all of the figures, and they made their best offer and lost out, then the process was started all over again, and then they were, lo and behold, able to make a better offer. Is that what you're saying?
No, ma'am. I don't. No, ma'am. That's not exactly what I'm saying. The process doesn't work like that.
Explanation. Thank you.
Are there? Mr. Orwell.
Second time, I was curious about Ms. Jones' comments, so I'm going to let you finish. Explain that again, just so, did we look at it the first time?
No, it made it, I think, to the, and I think we confirmed this with procurement, it made it to the board work session agenda, but we pulled it. We pulled the recommendation. So we didn't bring it, and this was in 2016.
Someone answered Ms. Jones' question. Did we look at it on here? Was it out there?
And that's what I was saying, we didn't.
If it was for work session.
I'm asking. That's what I'm asking. I want to know the answer.
It's on the agenda days before the meeting. We didn't discuss it because it was pulled, but it was certainly out in the public.
No, she's got a valid point. I'm asking, and maybe procurement answer, was it out there, and was, I understand what you're saying, if you did it on an HVAC contract and then you pull it back and then you let somebody else redo it.
If it made it to the agenda, it certainly was published.
Okay, so that, I understand her point, whether it was a mistake or not. So, because I'm trying to remember, it was 3 months ago. Why did it get rebid? Because we didn't extend an invitation to MetLife to bid on it?
No, sir. We have 3 current vendors that offer individual policies.
Gotcha.
It's Colonial, American Fidelity, and Aflac. We did not send a personal invitation for them to bid on it. We were starting to hear several complaints from those vendors, as well as some board members were asking why we didn't extend the personal invitation to them in terms of who we sent the RFP out to. We sent the RFP out to initially 7 vendors who are really in the group sponsored short-term disability business. And so the current vendors, they offer disability programs, but it's on an individual basis. But we did after we pulled it, we met with those vendors, we sat down to tell them, kind of what our plans were, what we were thinking and what we were looking for, to give them an opportunity to bid. So really, the reason that we pulled it last time was for those 3 vendors, honestly.
And none of them were the successful bidder?
No, sir, they were not.
Okay, so, in fairness to the other 10, it's a competitive marketplace. I'm glad you answered these questions. I still think y'all did a good job, and you did it for the right reason, because the winning bidder was not the one complaining, but maybe took advantage of the opportunity. Was MetLife the one last year when, and it was over the life insurance?
It was for the life insurance.
Life insurance that all of a sudden it went down like $5 million?
Mm-hmm. 9.
Because we went through a similar process, we rebid that, and so another vendor, Minnesota Life, they were able to come in and they submitted a lower response in terms of the bid.
So in the interest of fairness, and not that y'all did anything wrong, I understand what you did, maybe it does make sense, because I was thinking different, to do it one more time to be fair to everybody. And I didn't initially think that, but I didn't remember all the background. But now Unum's got their price out there, MetLife's got their price, and the other 5 people have their price. So maybe Aetna comes in, I'm just making that up, I know they're on there, and they come in and say, we know the price point here, we'll do it. I mean, that's not the best way to do business, but, and it's probably a pain for somebody, and maybe MetLife or whomever will come in even lower, save the employees more money. So
That could obviously be the case. I will say the second go around, we did have 12 vendors that responded to the 2017 RFP.
And your ratio of employees, your ratio of people that enroll to employees is about 80%? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, sir.
So someone's going to know they're going to get about 8,000 people? Huh. Oh, no, I'm just saying, Teresa, that 8,000 of the 10,000 said we want it.
Call for them to automatically be enrolled, and then you have to opt out.
So how many people have opted out themselves? 2,000 opted out?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir, because that was the
maybe
only way.
A couple thousand may not even, they just don't even know it, like you were saying, or someone said, and it's coming out of their paycheck.
Or they chose not to do it. They could have kept their individual policies. We did receive, obviously a lot of employees were calling, asking questions during open enrollment, and really trying to weigh the pros and cons of sticking with an individual policy versus going with the group sponsor policy. And I even talked to a few of them. And for some folks, depending on their situation, it was more advantageous and beneficial for them to stick with an individual policy.
Gotcha.
They were willing to pay more to get a higher level of benefit. For some people, they wanted it just in case something happened. They felt like they were relatively healthy. They didn't expect anything, but they wanted that safeguard in place. So like the group sponsor plan was the best benefit for them. So through the open enrollment process, we were talking to employees, and it was great. The great thing about it is employees had actual options. It wasn't just you have to choose this individual long-term disability policy. You now can choose one that's group sponsored, that's cheaper, that could better fit your needs, or if you need, something that's going to provide a higher level of income replacement, you have that option as well.
Right, it's a commodity. It's no big deal. So, but what I'm saying is, now the winning bidder the first time, but it got thrown out in public, shown in public. I didn't realize that. The winning bid the second time, it got shown in public, so now everybody knows what their winning bid was. I just think in fairness, Superintendent, in fairness, it's disadvantage to both of them now because the other 10 people know exactly what they were going to charge. And maybe we'll save money for the employees even better. And it's a commodity. It doesn't matter who I could care less who gets it. But let them fight all over each other and do it. We obviously didn't do things, you know, and abundance of caution the second time, which was good. But anyway, that's just my point. Sorry I took too long. I was asking a question.
So I think we came into this with just the mindset of whatever the board wants to do. I mean, I think it's not a terrible hurdle to have to notify employees that we're not offering the benefits. So we will bend towards the will of the board.
So,
Board Member Woods.
thank you, Madam Chair. The gavel's getting bigger and bigger around there, man. I want to just impress upon the board that I think there are a couple things that we need to have a discussion on, and unlikely tonight, but in the unlikely event that there's a procurement issue that comes up again and a vendor's information is made public, you guys took it upon yourselves to do due diligence and put the RFP back out again. I'm not opposed to doing another RFP. I do think we need to establish precedent and say what will be our protocol when this happens in the future. I think that's Board Member Jones's point. That original vendor was disadvantaged, so we said we're going to put out another RFP. Well, we still that you don't unring that bell. That vendor is still going to be disadvantaged and may not be able to compete with the winning vendor's bid regardless. But I do think we need to have a protocol. I think that's what some of the board members are asking, saying, what will be our process in the unlikely event that occurs again? So, since if the will of the board is to put another RFP out, I want to know what happens. While I agree with the board that they don't have anything, if your boss comes in and say you're going to get a raise January 1, and I come back and say, well, I'm going to wait till the summer to give it to you, while you may not have it today, you anticipated that something happening January 1. You may have moms, potential moms that are planning pregnancies. There are things that may be in the pipeline that will occur come January 1. So I think you can do it simultaneously. I would like for you to see if you can put out an RFP to accomplish the goal of having a fair process. But at the end of the day, if we made commitment to 8,000 employees that they were going to have a benefit come January 1, I do think you're taking something from them. I do think you're taking something from them.
Seeing no other light, Superintendent, I appreciate all the healthy discussion amongst board members. I think there is some impetus to have a new RFP, but I think we will wait to see the will of the board next week if there is a motion to rescind and officially cancel, or if people are moving forward with the current contract. I do believe that having this kind of level of discussion about a healthy process, if it makes it more competitive and it's a better benefit for our employees, I'm all in favor of that. Moving on to 8.3, SCS School Board Strategic School Funds Allocation Program Resolution, December 2017.
Mr. Johnson.
We received 4 requests from 2 board members, and we've highlighted them here. Board member Caldwell received 3 requests from Central High School, one related to an irrigation system, a sound system, and a bottle refilling system for their schools. And then we've also received a request from Board Chair Avent related to Westwood High, a weather bug program for their STEM program. And those are highlighted. And the resolution is asking for the approval of those allocations and directing the superintendent to allocate those funds to the respective schools to implement the above projects.
Seeing no comments, moving on to 8.4, Board Legal Counsel in the amount of $80,000. I guess I'll speak on since it's a board item. This is a contract in order for the board to obtain its own legal counsel. We had RFPs from 2 local firms, and the recommendation based on the polling of the board was to go with the Morris law firm. And this is an amount up to needed in legal fees for the representation of the board on an on-needed basis, as needed basis. Mr. McCormick.
I just want to clarify then, so is this a up to $80,000 that will be billed at an hourly rate as we require service from the law firm?
Yes.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional lights. Moving on to 8.5, 2017-2018 board meeting calendar. This is a request to change the date based on for the February work session from the date of the 30th to the 20th because of the Tennessee School Board's schedule in February for On the Hill Day. So when we made a recommendation for our calendar to be approved, this date was not solidified, and now that we do have the date for TSBA's On the Hill Day, we would like to change the date from the 13th to the 20th of the work session. Seeing no lights, there's no other business before the board. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. I forgot, Ms. Jones. 8.6, the disparity study.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that was discussed in our procurement committee meeting earlier this afternoon. It was not published with the regular agenda. We did agree to put it on for, I think at this point, based on what was presented at the committee meeting, there is a need for the board to weigh in and vote on the acceptance of that recommendation. So it would be my desire if we could add this to the agenda next week for a formal vote.
If there are no objections, then this item will be added to the agenda for the board business meeting. There's no other business. The meeting is adjourned.
No. We working there.
There's another one.
You finished your laptop? You finished your laptop?
Yeah.